Yo, welcome back to the Feather Your Lifestyle podcast, conversations on lifestyle, passions, and hustles. My name's Chris Fairlong. I am your host, and I'm super excited to be back here having the conversation with you. Now today, episode 59, and each week I am more and more grateful of just actually reflecting on how this podcast is progressing and just being able to see the small progress over each week, each day even, and to think now that I've been doing this for longer than a year, actually, I can't believe we're almost halfway into 2022. But that aside, really what I want to focus on today, and it's going to be short and sweet because, as I mentioned, I'm very, very grateful of the progress that I'm having building out this podcast. Of course, there's always that challenge of we want more, we want to be growing quicker, or we want to be somewhere else. But at the same time, we need to be making sure we're taking the time to reflect and see that progress to date. And I have talked about this quite a lot, and I want to continue to talk about it because it's super important. But today I want to talk about the reality of making progress and taking action, and really just taking you through some simple steps that I believe is super important for you to understand and is going to help you progress that little bit easier. Now, before we dive into it, there's a couple of things that I kind of just wanted to just take a moment to remind you about, and that's why this episode is short and sweet. It's more of a kind of a check-in and just to say, hey, I want to tell you some things. And that is that today, this is a reminder that you have what it takes. That, you have the ability to make the change and to build what you want. At the same time, some of these things can be a little cliche. They can be a little, a little fluffy, or, people say these things. But it really all does start with you and taking some daily steps and some small and consistent steps. That's all it takes, right? And the rest comes with the momentum. The rest comes with the snowball effect. The rest comes with that tipping point of once you get to that point where you've done enough that things start to just take action. Things start to just take momentum and things start to move in the right direction. And I really just wanted to be able to have this conversation with you, really just to, maybe it's to give you that boost, maybe it's to say, hey, things are going to be okay, or maybe it's just to maybe give you that encouragement, some extra boost. I don't know, but this is what's been on my mind and really I've been encouraged by this week, so I feel like I need to share it with you guys as well. So the 3-step process to make things happen, the 3-step process to really progress, and the 3-step process, which it really is simple, but if you follow it, you can actually get to where you want to be. And that might come over a short period of time, a long period of time. It will differ depending on what those goals are that you're pursuing, but this is what that 3-step process is. Number 1, identify with conviction what you want. Now, what I mean by this is get it out there and own it and live to it, right? And this might be, and I'm going to talk about the things that I'm doing because that's what, is relevant to me. Setting ambitious goals and, tracking to it. And I've made it open. I'm very transparent with my goals around my reselling business, around this podcast, around my running and things that I want to achieve this year. I'm transparent about it because it helps keep me accountable. And that's the conviction that I can put out there and say, this is what I'm doing and this is how I'm going to get there. Now, along the way, things might not work out. Now, for my reselling, I have a goal to hit $60,000 in profit over, 2022. In my running, I'm doing another 50K. I want to do 2,500 kilometers in total distance. And I want to do 2 half marathons on average each month for 2022. Now, when it comes to this podcast, I set the ambitious goal to grow to 10,000 downloads. Now, I'm about to hit 1,000 for this year, or basically I've already passed 2,500 at the time of this episode, but the momentum, the snowballing is starting to happen. But that aside, what I'm trying to say is that if you have something that you want, whether it's a big goal, a small goal, if it's going to take a lot of work or it's going to take a little amount of work, you need to identify this with conviction and make sure you know it and own it, right? And I'm repeating myself simply because once you understand that, the ability of actually putting things out there and wanting them to be part of your life. And this is where step number 2 comes really important, because if you want these things, you need to understand what is it actually going to take. And that's number 2, which is break it down into progressional milestones. Be it daily, be it weekly, be it monthly, but understand what is required. Like, we set these goals, we set these ambitions, we set these things that we want. Yet sometimes we don't even know what we're signing up for. We don't even know what we're committing to. People say, I want to lose weight this year. I want to get the six pack, or I want to lose 20 kilos. But then they realize that means they're getting up at a certain time to hit the gym, and they have to do 40 minutes of blood, sweat, and tears because that's the only time they can do it in their, daily routine. Or they have to go for a run after hours because that's the time they've only got time to do the run, and it's in the dark. They're not motivated. It's cold. Or, people are wanting to build a side hustle, start a business, and they realize that they have to do this. There's all these different things that they have to jump through to get it set up and get it operating and get it happening. They might have to learn, they might have to educate. You want to start a YouTube channel? Well, you're going to have to learn how to film. You're going to have to get comfortable in front of the camera. What I'm trying to say is we set all these ambitions, we set all these goals, and it's important to have that conviction and understand what it is. And then this next layer, as I've just said, in breaking it down of what those milestones look like, what's the effort going to take? That's when reality sinks in, right? And we start to realize this is actually going to be a lot of hard work. But when you do break it down, and some of it might be, if you do want to hit a certain goal, maybe it means you need to do 5 push-ups a day, or you need to do 7 kilometers a day, or you need to be selling $160 worth of profit per day. Whatever it may be, I'm just using some examples relevant to myself. But when you understand that, you can start to see, is this possible? Now here, you need to be super careful because it's not about thinking that it's not possible and then making your goal easier to achieve. But it's actually being realistic, actually thinking, can this be something that with momentum, with effort, and with conviction and time and effort that I'm willing to commit to, is this something that I can make happen and work towards? And, the beauty about goals is it's not about that you have to be perfect in achieving them. It's about progressing towards them, enabling yourself to grow, right? And by breaking it down into those manageable chunks, or I guess digestible chunks, it just takes the load off a bit, By taking that conviction, breaking it down, you start to see, hey, this is possible. I can do this. And you start to realize, are you actually passionate about this? Are you really wanting this? Or was it just this, fancy idea, some excitement at the start of the year, or what you're seeing others doing and you're thinking, I could do this too? And it leads me to my third point. You've got the conviction, you've got the understanding of what it's going to take, you see the progressional milestones that's required. So number 3 is action. You need to do it. You need to show up. And whether you feel it or not, this is when you need to do the work. You've put it out there that this is what you want. You've actually seen the roadmap to make that happen. Now you need to do the gap. Now you actually need to do it, right? You need to show up. And I think the key thing here is it's not necessarily about focusing so much on the action, do, and go, but actually the action of showing up, putting yourself in the position to actually make it happen. And a good example of this is running. Sometimes we feel tired. Sometimes it's just, you don't feel like going for a run, but getting out there, giving it a shot. One day, you're going to have a really, really good day. And if you're a runner, it's going to feel great. You don't feel any heaviness. You don't feel any niggles or anything. You just run and it feels like a breeze. And you get to run as high. Some days you're going to have really big sales days. Some days you're going to have things that just work. Some days you're going to push through the coding that you're doing. Some days that you're going to be able to achieve more with clients. Some days things are just going to work better, right? And that's the flow of it. But when that happens, you need to ride it. You need to make the most of that. You need to see that those come in waves, because there's going to be low points and you still need to be willing to show up in those low points. And the sooner you understand about these low points, understand that they are going to come, you need to be willing to push through them, right? And this is part of the action. The action isn't necessarily, just doing exactly the same thing every single day. That's part of the routine. That's building the habits, that's building the momentum and that snowball effect. But you also need to be willing to push through. You start to get outside of your comfort zones and use that as a way to take action, right? Because if you expect that you do exactly the same thing every single day and you're going to have, next level growth, there's some parts there that you need to realize it's actually more about 1% per day. It's about doing a little bit extra per day. And that little bit extra might mean you have to learn, you have to pivot, you have to adjust, you have to be uncomfortable, and it's going through those days that are hard. Going through those days where things don't go into your favor, going through those days where you don't have any sales, going through those days where you feel sore, going through those days where things just aren't working out. But the next day is a new day. It's a new opportunity. And I think where you might want to start thinking, okay, is there actually anything you need to be concerned about, is when you're having a long period of lows, a long period of down. And I'm not to say that that's when you give in. What I'm saying is that's a chance to maybe reassess, understand what's not working. Are you exhausted? Do you need to change it up? Do you need to ask for help? Taking action, doing it, showing up, doesn't mean you can't ask for help. And setting these ambitious goals, setting these things that you want to progress through, doesn't mean you can't ask for help. And that's the key part of it. The action isn't all about you. The action is all about making it happen. And how you make that happen is delegating, getting the support, talking to someone, asking for help. And also, it means reflecting and looking back and seeing what has been working, what hasn't been working, and what do you need to be doing to be getting to that next position that you want to be in your milestone, right? And talking through it to yourself, understanding that this is what I want, this is what I'm going to do, so therefore I need to make it happen, and you reprioritize. Look, this conversation is both open, honest, raw, but it's blunt at the same time. And the reason why I want to encourage you is because you are seriously and literally only one step away from changing your life. And that is because that first step that you take starts you on that momentum journey of being able to make this progress snowball that eventually, as I said at the start, gets to a tipping point and things start to just fall into the favor of the things are working out. Things are moving quicker than you expected. And I know this because I've experienced it in different ways. And sometimes we don't see that momentum. We don't see that progressional point of, tipping point or snowballing. If you don't understand what snowballing is, it's literally as a snowball rolls down a hill, it builds up and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it gets more momentum and it moves faster. And that's because things just start to work in the favor. And it's the momentum. It's physics, and I'm not going to go into that. But my point here is that if you don't take the steps forward, if you don't show up daily, if you don't give yourself the chance to be able to learn, grow, experience, take some levels of defeat, some things will fail. But if you don't take any of that in, you can't experience it enough to be able to then take it, play through it, and then crunch through it, play through it, crunch through it, and then actually go back out there and take action with what you've learned from that. And, it's kind of like a filter. You need to filter the thing that's coming through and then go out and okay, this is what I got to do. This is the next step. This is the next action. And I'm talking so much about do, this, that. It might sound fluffy, but let me break it back down to you. These are the 3 steps to make it happen and for you to progress more this year. Number 1 is identify with conviction what you want. What do you want? What does it look like? Talk about it. Make it very vocal. And it doesn't have to be about telling the world, but make sure you own it with conviction. It becomes part of your life. Number 2 is break it down. Understand the progressional milestones. What is it going to take daily, weekly, and monthly? What's required? And accept that with the conviction, right? Own that. And number 3 is the action, is actually doing it. You know what you want. You know what it's going to take. So now show up and get ready to go on a roller coaster ride of ups and downs, and it will happen. It will happen. I'm not saying I have the answers for what you need to do because it's going to be different for everyone, but follow those and remember to bring yourself back to why you're doing it, which is that conviction of what do you want? Why do you want it? Identify it and break it down. I think I've been pretty clear. So look, I don't want to harp on any more on this. This was really to keep it short, keep it sweet, and just remind you with some nudge, with some love, and with some encouragement. But at the same time, I wanted to be realistic about it too, because these things, we can't have things if we're not willing to, step out and take them. And sometimes that journey might be a long journey, or it might just be a quick opportunity that is around the corner, or a new door that's opening up. So I hope you've been challenged by this. I hope you've been encouraged. And if you want to talk about this, if you think, no, this isn't right, Chris, or you don't believe in this, or maybe you want to talk a bit more about how can you get that momentum, or what are the things that you need to be, understanding to break it down? How do I set those milestones? I'm more than happy to continue the conversation. You can reach out over at Instagram, send me a DM at Further Your Lifestyle. Hit me up on Twitter at Further Your Life, or send me an email, hello@furtheryourlifestyle.com. If you are on YouTube, you can drop a comment as well. I'm more than happy to continue the conversation. Look, at the end of the day, if you want to talk about it, if you need some help, I'm all ears. I've got my hand up, happy to help. And I'm very passionate about this because, I want to see other people thrive. I want to see other people get to where they want to be. And sometimes we need the support. Sometimes we need a cheerleader. And I talked about this just before, that taking action might mean asking for help. And it's okay to do that. Really do appreciate you. It's been, great to have this quick conversation. And I'm really heated up by it because I'm passionate for you. And I want you to understand that once you do this, it is very rewarding. So please, if you're not too sure, go back, listen through this, see if you can understand from this, the things that you need to be doing. Otherwise, reach out for some help and let's continue the conversation. Otherwise, you have a wonderful day. Cheers. Now, if you didn't know, we do have the podcast merch, and this is with a key focus of enamel pins. Now, if you haven't checked these out, make sure you do, because the intent of these are really just to be a small token and a reminder for you to charge on, to push on, and to further your lifestyle. Whether it is a gift for someone else to encourage them, or maybe to inspire them, or maybe it's a way to motivate yourself, or you can simply just make a purchase to simply support the podcast, which would be greatly appreciated. We do also have some sweaters and some long tees, so make sure you check it out. Link in the description and in the show notes. Really do appreciate it. Cheers.